actually at one point got there.
Yeah, but I mean, to be honest, it doesn't mean much. Maybe it means it sold 25 in a day or 30 in a day. But, you know,
Well, I think you've been
from a social media point of view, it sounds
I
good.
think most people that have that, what do you call it, that kind of ranking would do a bit more.
I don't know.
promotion
You'd
of
be
it.
surprised. You'd be surprised. But alhamdulillah, it was good. It was good to showcase that, you know, on the top 10 books at a certain period of time under that category, there was an Islamic book articulating a positive and rational and, you know, compassionate case for Islamic theism.
Here's the question: when was the last time that happened?
Well, that's why I wrote the book,
Right.
because one of the gaps was there's no literature on this issue. I mean, there were some,
Yeah.
but I don't think they were adequate from that point of view, or they were old. They didn't catch up to you know, our current times. What I mean by current times, past 18 years or so, because post 9/11, there's been a different narrative, which is the neo-atheist movement. Although it's dying down a bit, but nevertheless, you have, you know, secular trends on campuses. It's affecting the hearts and minds of Muslims and non-Muslims.
It's incredible, isn't it? Because like, I was reading and I was looking at some Pew Research information when I went to New York and stuff. I wanted to see what the demographics were like in terms of Muslims in America.
Yes.
And it said that 23% of Muslims would apostate in America. Obviously, they have like there's limitations to the sample size, etc.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. It's anecdote. Well, it's not
Generalizing.
conclusive,
Yeah.
but there's
But
something
still,
there.
there's something there, isn't there?
Even from my personal experiences, when I travel the world, go up and down the country, I speak to Muslims and non-Muslims, and these trends are there. You know, ideas about science and, you know, the kind of basic false assumptions that, you know, we have science now, it's working, therefore God is not necessary, which is fallacious. And you have to unravel these assumptions and have decent discussions with people and teach them about their own tradition sometimes. So, yeah, the trend is there, and we have a duty.
It was offset
But I do
by
believe, though,
yeah.
I do believe that maybe 90% has nothing to do with intellectual arguments. The intellectual arguments for me are sometimes maybe not an excuse, but they're just secondary. What's happening at the root core is social stuff. For example, the development of the social norm, right? Social psychologists talk about informational social influence and normative social influence. This is based on our need to belong and our need to feel certain. So if I'm not certain about something, because I have a need for certainty, I'm going to go to the masses, right? And unfortunately, in our kind of space, it's secular ideas, like rejection of the divine, in some sense, yeah. Now, if I, for example, have a need to belong, and I don't find that belonging in my immediate group, for example, or subgroup, I'm going to go again to the masses. So if I'm a Muslim on university campus and have a need for certainty, and my certainty is getting challenged, right? And I don't have any certainty anymore in my tradition, then I'm going to go to the masses for that.
Right.
Because it's a human need.
Yeah.
Also, if I have a need to belong, I'm not connected to, you know, my subgroup, right? I'm going to connect to the bigger group. And generally that bigger group sometimes is an irreligious group.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying they're evil or anything. What I'm saying, this is just the nature of how social norms are developed. So it's literally based on two things. Need to belong and need to feel certain. So when we try to articulate Islam in the public sphere, we need to create a sense of belonging and a sense of certainty. Sense of certainty is probably easy. Sense of belonging is harder because you have to be compassionate and you have to make them realize that you don't become an ethno-religious cult, because that's the wrong type of belonging. You
Judaism.
Well, like
That's exactly what
like a
Judaism is.
sect, essentially. So essentially, what you want to do is show them that you can be connected with people who share the same ideas and values as you, but at the same time you can connect to the bigger group and, you know, connect with your brothers and sisters in humanity, whether they're religious or not is irrelevant, but it has to be done in a kind of modern tolerant context. Anyway, the point is we need to focus on belonging and certainty, and certainty doesn't always mean intellectual certainty. It could be existential certainty, things that just feel right, sense of being. Because think about Islam, bro. Islam for me is not a belief. Yeah, here's a controversy.
Right, okay.
It's not a belief if you mean a belief in a philosophical sense. Because beliefs, according to philosophers, could be mundane. I believe this is a microphone. Oh, wow. How does that affect my being? How I relate to the world? It doesn't affect anything. It's a microphone. There's a human being. There's a ceiling. There's the floor. Do you see my point? Islam is more than a belief. It's a form of knowing that changes your state of being, meaning affects what you No, what you feel in your heart, what you have in your heart, and how you react and relate in the world. That's a different kettle of fish. And that's why language is very important when you're articulating Islam to people, because I say to people, well, Islam's not a belief. It's actually a form of knowing that changes what you think, how you feel, and how you relate in the world. So it's a different kettle of fish. So those things are existential things. For example, I can give you the beliefs or the abstract knowledge of my mum's cooking, right? This is how you cook a good moussaka dish, Greek dish, yeah? And I can give you all the recipes and how she does it. But I'm telling you, you knowing how to do it won't make you taste my mum's cooking. For you to know what my mum's cooking tastes like, you have to come over and enjoy the cooking. So there's a difference between abstract knowing and how you relate to the world. And Islam affects how you relate to the world. Because sometimes I can have a conviction about something, bro, and I can never articulate it.
I was going to say...
Do you see what I'm trying to say here?
100% what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's more on the lines of like subjective experience. First person subjective experiences.
Well, it's more in line with the concept of Iman. Because Iman should not be translated as belief in an abstract philosophical sense. Because how do we know what Iman is? It's what you believe, what's in your heart, and how you react and act in the world. So Islam is very existential from that point of view, and our dawah hasn't focused on that.
Right.
Our dawah, in terms of how we outreach to our brothers and sisters in humanity, we usually talk about, I can prove God exists, I can prove that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the final prophet, therefore you're Muslim. Well, technically, that doesn't make you a Muslim. What makes you a Muslim is that you have that, at least that intention to worship Allah. La ilaha illallah. There is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. That is not only a state of belief, it's a state of knowing that affects something. At least you have an intention to worship Allah. Because here's a question. If I said I believe in Allah and I believe in His Messenger, but I will never intend to worship Him, right? It's very difficult to call me a Muslim. I'm not doing takfir, of course, but if I say I will never pray, I will never praise Him, I will never do the shahada again, I will never do anything.
So obviously this goes into like the whole aqidah discussion of what's the murji'ah versus the...
I don't want to go into those classical discussions, but the point I'm trying to say is, let's be real about the matter.
Someone will say this person's never a Muslim in the first place.
Exactly. But I don't want to go into those discussions. My discussion is more of an existential one, right? So, we want to show people that Islam changes your state of being. Now, how does this relate to certainty, as we just spoke about earlier? Because certainty is not just about abstract proofs. Certainty is about how you relate to the world. Because to be is to be related. Right. For example, what's a personality on a desert island? What does rahmah, what does compassion mean on a desert island? Not much. You have to relate to things. And that's why in Islam we believe the greatest relationship you can ever have is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because look, I'm going to say to you, if an article came across with great deductive arguments that disproved Islam, it wouldn't really bother me. Because none of that is going to challenge what I feel in sajda. When I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and I connect with Him, and all the other kind of evidences and experience that I've had, that if you bring them all together are far more weightier. Do you see? And that's an existential relationship, like Al-Ghazali, he made a really good point. He said, look, don't think your iman, your state of being, right? Your how you relate to the world, how you know Islam is true, is going to be based on some abstract deductive argument. Because if someone's smarter than you, and I'm doing postgraduate research now, and I'm telling you, we get trained how to play around with premises. You could give me a really good deductive argument, it could necessarily follow, just tweak something around, and you're like, oh my god, what'd you do there? So someone could play around with those premises, and then your conclusion could be totally different. So that's why Al-Ghazali said it's almost a bid'ah. It's like an innovation to have iman through this route only. There must be, and he concludes, there must be some kind of experiential aspect that you have started to pray and connect to the divine and be related, be in that state of being where you have some